Good morning, afternoon, maybe even evening to some of you, and happy Friday. We're so happy to welcome you to our next session of Unboxing Growth to Stay Out Front. And today's conversation is about 6 cultural shifts, or maybe a few more or a few less, you'll see, that are impacting sales. So cultural shifts that impact sales. Let's jump in, shall we? First, I just wanted to introduce Janine Moss, my business partner, and myself, Nicole DeMeo. We are your hosts today for this roundtable, and we have a marketing strategy and AI technology customer acquisition solutions company. And so we're working with our clients and partners to provide marketing and sales strategies, as well as MarTech tools that really enable you to catapult your business. And I just want to point out here that, we are grounded in the center of absolutely everything we do is a focus on purpose and results, or results with purpose, however you want to phrase it. But we're really focused on working with mission-driven organizations, partners, solopreneurs, coaches, folks like all of you, and in helping our partners and our clients meet their purpose and achieve that. And there are the different ways you can stay in touch with us. So we invite you to post in the chat, how are you feeling today? Let's check in. How are you feeling today? What's going on for you at this moment? I don't know about you, but I feel unusually peaceful for a Friday. Given the craziness of the week in the news, especially being based here in Silicon Valley. Yeah, we got energized, grateful, fantastic. All right. Gray day, but beautiful, calm for a Friday. Awesome. That's good that you're great. Anticipation, hopeful, joyful. Fantastic. Beautiful. Well, we're excited to talk about culture today. And we thought that this quote was one that really kind of sums up a lot of how culture impacts all of us. So we seldom realize that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own. For we think in terms of languages and images, which we did not invent, but which were given to us by our society. So those feelings of those general feelings and the gestalt and cultural shifts that are impacting all of us. And a lot of times they're not just our own.
And you think about how hard it is to make a successful communication. And then you think about memes and jokes and puns and all the references we make in marketing. And you realize this is why we are able to communicate at all, is because of these shared cultural aspects.
Yeah.
So that sets our stage for the talk today. And we're going to talk about the 6 ways. Look, culture is an enormous topic and it affects far more than just 6 things. But we got to narrow it down and get talking about it. We're going to invite you also to join us in discussing other impacts. But just to get kind of into the mood and the mindset, culture impacts timing when you interact. For example, I got a survey from somebody I really like in the middle of the day yesterday, in the middle of my work day, and I don't have time to do that. And I put it aside. I might forget about it, whatever. But when you receive your communications is critical. Therefore, you have to understand the environment your audience is in. So timing, the content, what you're saying, like we just talked about, who you're talking to, because that's shifting now too. I'm sitting in a gamer's chair. People like me didn't buy gamer's chairs a couple of years ago, but they do now. So why? Because they're sitting in their chairs 100 hours a day, right? So vernacular, the words you use, we've got new vernacular that's coming out all the time. The channels that we choose to go out in also say a lot about who our brands, who we are, what our products and services are. And probably the most important impact is the why. The why has changed so much and is consistently changing. And it's not about our why, it's about our customers' why. So those are just some of the things we're going to be talking about, but feel free to jump in the chat, and we're going to look at all the things at the end. So we thought this is really important because underlying cultural influences are always affecting sales and marketing, right? And what we see, the words, the tonality, the body language and gestures are really reflections of what's going on beneath the surface. And if you take a look underneath the surface, you're talking about beliefs and values. And I don't know if you were with us last month, but we did a webinar on emotional intelligence. And we talked about, understanding the being sensitive to the feelings, beliefs, values of the people you're talking to. And that's what this is about as well, is being taking that into account when you're doing your sales and marketing. There's also our biases, our prejudices, the experiences that we come from, our fears, our dreams and feelings, and all of these are shifting all the time as culture shifts around us. So this is a framework that we generally use during crisis, but we thought it would be helpful for you now and amidst this great transformation that we're undergoing because things are in such flux. And so the reason why we have it is that you're not always selling, you're not always, communicating in a straightforward, here's my product, please buy it way. There's a lot of other interactions that you have, and that might be more appropriate for engaging with your audiences. So informing, that's simple. We all know about that. We're having a webinar. Here's the date. That's just clear, right? It's always something important to do. Education, I'm going to assume that everybody on this call is educating about whatever they do, whether you're a coach, whether you're a business, whatever it is, there's a lot of education, and an interested customer who has an intent to buy will be interested in your education, right? Then there's the reassurance. I'll give you an example of that. We're working with an AI technology right now that's positively focused. It wants to be part of making AI a positive force for good in the world, as opposed to all the fear that many of us have right now. So reassuring about that and explaining about that's a very powerful thing to do in this kind of fraught environment, right? Amplifying others, whether it's a person or a brand, it shows your camaraderie, it shows your connection, and puts positive things in the world and continues your engagement. Creating community. Remember the pandemic pods? Remember we had them because they were a trusted few that we could hang out with during the pandemic. That's not going away. That's only getting larger and more entrenched. And you can see that from fandom to travel, which we're going to talk about. And collaboration. And what, Nicole and I have a thing that we say about our business, and this is true, which is that we are co-creators. We don't create by ourselves. We create with the brands or the companies or the people that we're working with. And that collaboration is what creates the connective tissue and creates the trust. So these are just great things to keep in mind during fraught times, And so even though it's a little self-serving because it's from IKEA, we do think this is a great quote, because I'll tell you why. All brands are in the business of life at home, she says. Whether you're a tech company, a health company, a food company, or a home furnishings company, you have to acknowledge that home is the starting point of everyday life. Well, for many of us, it's not just the starting point, it's our entire lives. I go for many days only taking my dogs for a walk, right? And I'm not alone. So that we have to shift our mindset about how we envision our audiences and where are they and what are they doing. Like I gave the example of the survey. If it's a personal survey, it should be after business hours, but what's that? We hardly even know what that is today. So we'll talk about that as well. So the idea of home and changing and intersecting at different times is really important. Let's see. And so Nicole, will you take us from here?
So what we wanted to do, what we're doing with you this morning is we're going to take you on a bit of a guided tour around these major bucket areas of cultural shifts and how they're impacting our lives and marketing and sales. And so the big buckets that we're going to touch on are work and the economy, health and well-being, family and community, and travel and leisure. So with work in the economy, here are a few statistics that just shine a light on where we are culturally at this moment. There's a big blurring of the lines, as Janine was referring to earlier. We are working from home more than ever before, and work life and home life, business life and personal life have really enmeshed and are very blurred in terms of the lines. And so, where remote workers are concerned about their boundaries, understandably. 90% say that the internet has been super essential, and most of us, 40% here, but I would say it's probably even higher than that, are using the internet in completely new and different ways that we didn't before. That's a major shift, right? E-commerce blew up. I was fortunate enough to work on the launch of e-commerce servers in the late 90s. And we thought everything was going to take off at that moment and everyone was going to stop going to stores and buy everything online. Well, no, but by the time, we hit 2019, it was 84.2%, which is really incredible. And people started saving more. And that, because of the shifts and the pandemic and social justice and the financial crisis, all these different things, people started to save more. That's a change in behavior, a major one, right? That's impacting how people, where and how they spend their money. And then the workforce, among adults 65 to 74, their participation rate was 25.8% in 2021, and it's expected to grow to 30% by 2031. So people are not retiring as early, and they're staying engaged and working. And so that's really important. These are all statistics that shine a light on how and where and when to meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. So what we have here are, and we invite you to post in the chat, how have cultural shifts impacted your business? So please feel free to pop some things in the chat. What we're seeing, and this is not the exhaustive list, and this is a co-creation process, but we're seeing an impact on sales as the items we have here. Everybody is digital first, right? We're building relationships. We are cultivating relationships. We are not just seeking information, but we're truly living in an absolute digital first world. Anxiety and stress are high. It's a reoccurring theme week to week. And I don't know about you all, but by the time we reach Friday, we get pretty tired. And there's just a lot of anxiety and stress. We're taking in a lot of content and information. And there's, we're exposed to things we've never been exposed to, in the past. So there's a high level of anxiety and stress. There is a real importance on doing more with less. And so in marketing and sales right now, we're really helping a lot of our clients and partners with focusing on loyalty and retention. So instead of going out and spending for new, we're doing more with less, right? And focusing on loyalty and retention. We're connecting at home, and we're expected response times have shifted. People really expect you to respond very quickly. We have all the tools, right? The Slack and Asanas and chats and whatnot, and people expect very fast response times. And so all of these things are very strongly impacting your marketing and sales and how you're getting out in the world. The strategy that we continue to see is digital personalization, that's really important, right? Because we are forming and cultivating our relationships online. And so digital personalization is an imperative, right? You can't just throw something out there that's a blanket pitch or offer. It really needs to be personalized to meet people where they are. And then in terms of tactics, Janine touched on timing a little earlier. It's really important to think about events and how events play into work in the economy. Are you attending things in person? Where you're going online for events? That's a really good tactic right now to continue to engage people. And then we have so many more media choices. We have all these new channels where we can communicate and market and sell. And it may be and we encourage you to think about what is in the flow of that person's daily life, right? As much as we spoke about, you're starting your day at home. And so the home is this nucleus, what are the changed media choices? I don't know about you, but I use a meditation app every morning. So if something gets into that flow, around maybe topics like the future of work or something like that, there are just so many more places that we can put communications out there. And so these are just some of the ways that we encourage you to consider cultural shifts in the economy.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to underline the expected response times, because it's a make or break situation in some businesses, particularly service businesses. I've just done a lot of home improvements, and the first person to get back, typically there's like stats that say if you don't get back within like 1 hour, you've lost the sale. And also, it's an indicator of the responsiveness of your brand. It really speaks about your brand and how responsive you are. So just wanted to underscore that.
Yeah, and again, we encourage you to post in the chat, anything you can think of, ways that cultural shifts have impacted your business. Mm-hmm. All right, Janine.
Oh, okay. Health and well-being. So, wow, that has changed so much. And Nicole just mentioned that she was on the wellness app, but also spirituality, and we'll talk about that too. So how we view self-care, which is, by the way, a big word that wasn't even very big 4 or 5 years ago, where we get our care, and how is all completely changing. So, and health and well-being is an enormous factor for almost everyone today. So the U.S. Surgeon General declared a health crisis among young people, and that was just a critical thing, because really, when the Surgeon General says it, it's important. And most young people now, like 16 to 24, are saying that their mental health and physical health are poor now. Enormous thing to take into account. Telemedicine. 37% of all adults were served with telemedicine, and they're used to it now. We're also getting our care at places like Rite Aid and CVS, and Amazon has launched an at-home care package. So how and where healthcare is delivered is really in flux. Rates of anxiety, depression, and substance use have increased. You saw in the pandemic, there was an increased alcoholism amongst older Americans, but there was also a turn towards the non-alcoholic and the more healthy drinks amongst other groups. So there's a shift in what we use, how we use it, natural remedies, plant medicines, psychedelics, they're all in the news now. And what does that say? It says we're all looking for new solutions to our health and well-being, which was thrown into relief by the pandemic and staying home a lot, right? So another interesting stat we just thought was fun to share is that 50% of gym members aren't going back to gyms. I'm one of those. I do a yoga app every morning instead of traveling to the gym. 13% of Americans reported starting or increasing substance use to cope. And that's a concept like cannabis, right? It's pretty open. Cannabis reduces anxiety. So many more people are consuming it for that reason. And 77% of employees have experienced burnout in their current job. You know, this is so interesting because Nicole and I were working on a major project for a global holding company of agencies, of advertising PR agencies. And we saw, their people had been laid off. The ones who were still there were taking on more roles. And we saw that in our research, but then we used this AI tool that we have, which we also did a webinar on last year called Topic Intelligence. And it surfaced the incredible trauma that people have experienced in the business world, right? Where the people were let go, and that was traumatic. The people who were stayed experienced the trauma. Now they have to do more with less, to Nicole's point. So there is just an enormous employee shift going on, which I'm sure you're aware of with the great workforce transformation. And then there's the issue of psychological safety. Places, there's an enhanced awareness in business in particular that it should be safe to say what you think, to contribute, to learn, to make mistakes. And that's kind of new. I mean, when I made mistakes in my career coming up, nobody said, oh, that's okay. It's a chance for you to learn. They were upset. So that's kind of a new cultural shift there. So let's talk about the impact a little bit. So first of all, again, there's new channels for communications. People are home, things are being delivered to their homes. You could be intersecting with people at Rite Aid or CVS. There's a lot of different channels that have been opened up. How you promote is also different because now a lot of things can be said that weren't said before, in terms of mental health and wellness. And I think we've talked about timing and responsiveness, very important. The social and business blur, I mean, this was happening prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic just accelerated it like crazy. Right. So now it's really hard. I mean, it takes me 3 hours to get from my bedroom to my office, which is about 15 feet away. So it's like, what happened there? I hardly know. I've got my dogs barking. If you hear little snipping and barking, that didn't used to happen. And there's also this whole community arising. I'm now part of groups of health and wellness that I never would have been before, but now I'm meeting people from all over the world on my computer. It's really quite amazing. So strategically, it could not be more important in the health and wellness category than to be observing emotional intelligence, because this health is one of the big three, right? Money, health, and love. And so you have to be very, very sensitive to how people are with the health and wellness right now. Your positioning in messaging, how connective you are, how thoughtful you are. And that's what the emotional intelligence AI tool that we talked about last time helps you do. Message more appropriately, talk to people, meet them where they are, as Nicole said. We didn't mention social justice, and it deserves a whole section unto itself, to be honest. Okay. And the impact that social justice has had on us in business. There is no assignment that Nicole and I are working on where DEI and social justice aren't an issue. Like even in the research I was talking about before, we discovered that, the number of people working at agencies who would not work on something that they didn't believe in or they thought was counter to cultural improvement has skyrocketed. People just don't want to do it. And before you'd say, hey, look, that's one of our clients. We'll give you something fun to work on, but you have to work on this too. They won't do that now, a lot of them. So, values, social justice, an enormous cultural shift. Then other tactics were huge components of listening. This is a great time to intersect with your customers and your clients and everyone else by listening, by asking questions, by doing surveys, by interviewing. And, there's a lot to that, and to do it in a sensitive way. But we have processes and methodologies to do that, but also social listening. Our research is a lot about listening. Could not emphasize that enough.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a couple of things that came into the chat as well. And Eric brings up the fact that, he loves that the environment is so much more open to people being able to talk about how they feel and maybe what they might be struggling with from a mental or physical health perspective. And that's really important because as, we're not just machines. And so it's really important that even in all of our business communications that it's business to human, right? We're connecting with the human inside in every communication. It's just so imperative that we're bringing that element to everything that we do.
Yeah, totally. So family and community, let me just say that family and community was probably not, and I know for a fact, was not what we thought it was for a long time. But it's changed even more and more dramatically in the last couple of years. I was the global head of communications for the September 11th Fund. And our mission was to help the victims, families, and communities recover from the tragedy. But we had to define what's a victim, what's a family, what's a community. And when it came to defining, this is 2001, right? When we were defining what a family was, we couldn't. We had it was definitely not a mother and father and some kids because your cousin was living with you. You had more than one family. There was so we went, okay, that doesn't work. So what is it? And after a lot of research and a lot of machinations, we came down to what family is people who are financially dependent on one another. And that's it. That's the only definition we could get. We had families living, an ex-wife's kid still living with the other family. And so that was a child. So anyway, I can't emphasize enough that it's not a couple of parents and a couple of kids. But there is a lot of stress. There's stress, anxiety, and changes in living situations, but there's also good news. There are almost 60 million US residents who are living in multi-generational families. And the amazing thing about that is that 80% of them are reporting better relationships since the pandemic. I mean, who'd have thunk that? I can attest to that, me personally, because I live with my daughter. And I'm not alone. I know a bunch of people whose kids either moved back how many people, kids moved back during the pandemic, right? So I live really happily with my daughter. We don't have any desire to change that. That's working out great for us. And it's working for a lot of people. That's going to change things, especially with the affordable housing issue that we have, and which is probably not going to go away anytime in the real, close future. Interestingly, divorces decreased during the pandemic. On the other hand, we don't know why, right? Was it because they had to and you couldn't get away? We're not quite sure about that, but it's happening. On the 42% of home sellers being baby boomers, what's really interesting about that is that about 50% of baby boomers are living in a different situation, right? And a lot of the people who bought their homes if those were not baby boomers, they're also living in a different situation. And we all know, I moved to Palm Springs from LA because I wanted more room. Well, so did everybody else in America, so we're all in new communities. We're all in these different family groupings, right? And to speak to the people who didn't do that, there's a lot of loneliness and isolation, and you read about that in the mental health issue. So there is a lot of that, and particularly among young people. And then 70% of US households, which is 90 million households, that's an incredible number, own a pet. So I have 2 pandemic dogs. That's why I keep going on mute and turning off my camera, because, it's changed my life. I spend different money on them. Everything's different. I have to travel differently. I have to spend money differently. I have to accept that there's dog toys all over my home when I didn't used to like that. More cleaning, all kinds of stuff that have changed my life as a result of having more pets. And so, and I see that happening everywhere. So families different, communities different, how we, who's the members of our homes, all of that. So it's a huge shift. So the impact. So first of all, we have to be more flexible, and we are in our interactions with people. So for example, we were on a call a couple of days ago with a client, and her son ran in there and interrupted our call. Well, were we mad? Did she seem unprofessional? No, we loved it. We thought it was the greatest thing ever because it kind of brings in a little bit of humanity, and we got to talk about her personally, and it was really nice. And we all are adapting to those kinds of work-life intersections and kind of enjoying it. We talked a little bit about the trusted communities, the pod concept. Nicole and I think this is only going to increase because you're going to need, the trust is at a crisis low point. It's never been lower, according to the Edelman Trust Barometer and other factors. So how are we going to get it back? And how do you function without it? That's something that we think about a lot in our work. So, trusted communities, we see that happening in travel, groups traveling together. We see it happening online. We see it happening with fans. Focus on local because we're at home. There's a lot of things happening in our little sphere, and that's become more important. Apps like Nextdoor are blossoming, right? And we talked about the new environments and really new tips of the spear. What that means is look at new ways to intersect with your communities that you didn't use before. You used to use some subject line and maybe it worked. Review it. Ask yourself, is there a better way to get in the door and get people's attention? So strategically, understanding that there's a new meaning of family and embracing that and not referring to this nuclear family that used to exist when you speak and communicate really is strategically an important thing to do. It affects your positioning and messaging. We talked about DEI already, I think. This feels like the same. We might have had a thing. Let me move on, because those two we talked about already, DEI and et cetera, right?
Yeah. And I also just wanted to add that, in terms of communities, we're all leaning even more so into communities like this one, C-Suite Network, Leadership Global, for so much more, right? It used to be a little bit of information sharing and maybe a little networking. Now the depths and richness of these communities goes so much further, right? There are, with Leadership Global, there's, the forum and the chats and the places where you can put out an offer or make a request or, and asking an offer. So engaging in these communities, I don't know about for you all, but it's gotten exponentially more meaningful and in depth. And these are the places to build, those trusted relationships. And we're all in the relationships business. Right. So I strongly encourage you to continue to do so and find new pockets within the communities where you already thrive, and perhaps other communities, because they're popping up on every single micro topic on the planet. And that's a good thing.
And inviting more people into your communities when you find a trusted person, right? Like, I echo what Nicole said. So travel, yeah, good news is it's rebounding like crazy, right? So food, flights, and entertainment are back very, very strong. But the workers who provide the service within those environments have not come back as strong. So there is sort of a redefinition of service. Like, for example, when you go to a hotel and you get one of those cards and it says, do you want nightly turn down service and sheet changing? Or is it okay if we don't do that? We can save the environment. We're low on staff. I always let the hotel do that. I always say, no, you don't have to do that, because I don't need my sheets changed every single night. And I do care about the environment, and I understand their staffing issues. So as consumers, we're being asked to understand a lot, and we do, which is kind of amazing. That's not always been true. So the sports stadiums are full again. People are eating out. They're visiting friends. They're taking trips. Weddings are up. Again, my niece is getting married in a month or two. The average time we're looking at a screen, we just thought it was important to put it there because it does have to do with entertainment. The average time we're looking at a screen increased 60 to 80%. We are on these things all the time now, and for almost everything we do. And another just kind of interesting thing to note, and which makes sense, is that travel insurance is booming. I never bought travel insurance, but I've had to cancel a couple of flights, one because Nicole got COVID and then I thought maybe I'd have it, and another one I had it. And so I had to cancel. So now I either always buy refundable tickets or I buy travel insurance, and so does everybody else. So that means that we're aware and cognizant of these vagaries of travel, and also, of course, all the troubles we had over this winter with flights. So it's changed, it's back, people want it, but it's not back the same way it was before.
Yeah. And a couple of other little trends that I just wanted to highlight are the fact that people are taking these shorter trips, right? So there's this whole thing about taking a trip or a vacation and doing a getaway within 4 hours from where you live, right? Mm-hmm. And that's been huge. And I don't know about you, but I've managed, I have a property that I've managed that's on Airbnb. And I was shocked to find out that people came from 20 miles away or 30 miles away to have a different experience. Right. So that is something that's also really impacting people is, they're keeping it closer to home. And platforms like Airbnb and VRBO and the like are really attracting a lot of people to have different experiences, but closer to home.
Yeah. So just a word on experiences too is, I'm sure that you're aware, like millennials always were saying, well, no, I won't buy this durable good. I won't buy a new expensive piece of clothing, but I do want an experience. And the pandemic has really focused us on that, because how many jackets do you need? How many pairs of shoes? Now that you're sitting at home, the value of experiences has grown exponentially. So we've seen a trend towards much fewer in real life events, and of higher quality. So people aren't just rushing out to everything, because like B2B sales have changed dramatically in terms of going to events, for example. So you've got fewer, they're more high quality, and even B2B has very much gone online. Spirituality and wellness, a lot of travel around that. Cannabis travel, psilocybin experiences, wellness, Elder Institute in Mexico, Chip Conley's place.
Elder Academy, yeah.
Right, the Elder Academy. So so much travel around these kind of special things that have come up and been amplified by the pandemic. So the types of travel that people are experiencing and seeking is different now. Nicole already spoke to the local experiences. And we've seen with short-term rentals, I probably remember during the pandemic, they took off a lot because a lot of hotels, they didn't have staff and the B&Bs were still in business. So there was a shift over to the Airbnbs, and that shift has somewhat continued, although their expenses went up. So now they're almost at par with hotels. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. So strategically, we know that people are still really cognizant of safety, security, and then the focus on experience, the positive experience. But you have to reassure them that it's safe and secure and set their expectations. People want to know what they're getting into. And the more detailed you can be about that, the more successful you'll be in making a sale. We spoke enough about trusted groups. I think the tech channels is an important thing to highlight here. The way we purchase travel is now, it's been online, but again, exploded in the last few years. So how could you intersect? For example, we have a client, Fran Meyer of BabyQuip, and BabyQuip is a company that provides baby equipment to people who travel. So you go to San Francisco, you don't want to bring your crib and your stroller and all that stuff. You can actually rent it through BabyQuip from an individual who owns it, who did a special cleaning process, and they deliver it to your hotel, right? So it's kind of the rental and gig economy stuff. But what's important about that, let's see, we're talking about the tech channels. This is all occurring. Oh, the way she's getting her business is through associations with hotels, with Airbnbs. So when you make your hotel reservation, it goes, oh, do you need a baby, some baby equipment? So there's ways to tap into the technologies which are delivering, people are using to book travel, to sell your products and services. And it's very, very open now. It's really opening up. And I think we talked a little bit enough about flexibility in regard to travel.
Yeah.
So, given that who you're talking to is changing, how you're speaking to them, why they're caring about what you have to say, where you're intersecting with them, and when, all has changed. We thought we just wanted to highlight a couple of things that you might want to ask yourself about where we are today, which is, has this created new competitive threats that you didn't have before, that you should be addressing? Will consumer behavior stay the same, change again, go back? I mean, we don't believe things go back. We've never seen that happen, but we have seen them not stay the same. So it's unlikely that they'll stay the same. So you do have to always be paying attention to these shifts and how they go. Can you adjust quickly to this new digital first customer? They're likely interacting with you for the first time online. So how are you going to create relationships? How are you going to build a customer in that environment? If you can't adjust quickly, or if you don't feel you can, then there's help for you. You can find people who can help you do that, right? And do you have the right experience and capabilities? Same thing. It's smart to just think about, can I adapt? Do I want to adapt? How should I adapt? And do I have the skills and capabilities? And if I don't, where can I get them? And we just included the supply chain thing because you remember in the pandemic that supply chain was severely impacted and people just couldn't get stuff. We don't know if yours is, but it's really something to think about going forward because it's likely that more things will happen and you will want to be prepared for them in your business. So we'd love to hear any of your questions and have any discussion that might ensue.
Yeah, we'd love to hear, how have cultural shifts impacted your business, your life, your travel? And what questions do you have around marketing and communications related to that? One thing I wanted to bring up that was mentioned, Georgia put it in the chat earlier, was the fact that she had just heard from a business professional that it takes 21 touch points to actually reach a customer. And, and that's absolutely, the case. There was once a time when we as marketing strategists were saying it was, it would take 7 touch points. Well, people have very, very short attention spans, and there's so many new channels, right? We're not just relying on the big 4, right? Facebook, Google, Apple, what have you. And so consequently, we do need to be in more places, but strategically, right? And tuned into where and how people are feeling at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to, pose a question. Emily is saying, I've found that sales pages are not having the same conversion rate after the iOS update. Have others had that same experience? So are you finding that your pages aren't converting as strongly with the new iOS update? I don't have personal experience with that right now because we're not tracking on it specifically.
And if it's conversion as opposed to traffic, then you do have to look at what your conversion methodologies are on that page and what you're saying. And anything that you can learn about the visitors that are coming and not converting will be really helpful. Are they the right people that you're pulling in, right? And are you saying the right things to them, meeting what they're interested, knowing why they're coming? Whenever we do a website, we say, who's coming? What do they expect from us? And how do we get them right there as fast as we can?
Yeah. Does anybody else have a question that they'd like to pose?
So, Nicole, I have a question. So I'm starting a new offering around leadership. And everyone that I've spoken to in what I'm going to say are professional services, I can't find anybody who's had a successful digital uptick. So they've all spent thousands on whether it's Google ads or LinkedIn things or whatever, with very little ROI to it. And I'm wondering, for CEOs, particularly of 2 to 500 million, is digital the best strategy? Is low tech a better strategy of getting them? How much time? I just don't think most CEOs of mid-market public companies are spending a lot of time on social media. And so I don't know if you've got, I don't expect you to give me a strategy, but I'm just wondering, I'm not really selling to consumers, right? I'm selling to a very targeted niche of highly educated, overwhelmed gentlemen and ladies who, and then I've got to figure out how I'm not McKinsey. So all of those things are of interest to me, of how to shift rather than, because to get above the noise level today, I understand if you're a big company and you've got a really good budget, but if you're a startup and you're trying to maximize result, I don't know if you've got some wisdom there or not, but that would be helpful for me.
Well, different channels produce different results, and social media is not a real solid conversion channel. In other words, if you're going for a sale, what it is a good channel for is to get somebody to your thought leadership, right? Mm-hmm. And that, so you say, what's on the CEO's mind right now, right? So what's on their mind is their employees, their workforce. That's a huge issue for them. What the hell are they going to do? Growth. How do they grow in this environment? Everybody's scared. Where's their money coming from? What should they invest in if they don't know what their MarTech stack is? There's a lot of issues on their minds about growth, and then their valuation as well. So if you produce some thought leadership that talks about those things, and then you support them on social, you can start dating, right? You're not going to get married for a while.
Yeah.
I have something to add to that, and that is that, and I think, Dan, you were on that Unboxing Growth where we spoke with Judy Shapiro about topic intelligence. So Janine and I have partnered with Judy Shapiro to offer topic intelligence to really understand the macro topics and the micro topics that people care about. And then now we're able to create articles around that. And that is the thought leadership that Janine is referring to. It's providing something of true value, and it shows your way of thinking. And it's like, you know what? He's got some really great insights there. I should get in touch with them. And then it's getting it in their pathway, which is the distribution strategy. But we're starting to do that with clients more and more so, and it is producing ROI. And we're with you, Dan. The same stuff that used to work is not working because everybody's online, right? And overwhelmed. And we're picking and choosing where we're going, when, and how we're ingesting this content. So if you have these content pieces and these thought leadership articles that we're helping, clients create, and we know that they're on topic, we help them get them into the pathway of their audience. And those are converting, and we're tracking absolutely everything, because everything should be tracked right now, and you should not be working with anyone or not using the tracking tools yourselves.
I think what's important about what Nicole said too is that we've been content marketers our whole lives. We've done publications and to the New York Times, you name it. But that was always us saying, here's what we think our audience is interested in, based on what we want to talk about, what we think they're interested in. We're going to do this piece of content. That's just not working as well anymore. It's really, what are they interested in? And that's where we are employing this AI technology to intersect. And it's not just growth. Growth has like a million different micro topics under it. And which ones of those are going to get your CEO's attention?